Well, hello and welcome to 2019 and the Mystic Brew. And I'm just going to check in and make sure that my voice can be heard if anybody is there. And if whatever, I'll start because it seems that my voice should be recording. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like it is. So anyway, let's see. So I'm just going to make this kind of brief, and even if there's nobody here, it'll go up this way here. It's already uploaded. And there's been a conversation I've been having in the middle of the Gnostic conversation. But there's a real discussion that's taking place now on the internet that is about our root, our story, instead of history, and how with history we're getting the story of victors, and we're not part of that story. And so there's a group of people who have seemed to have focused on the problems we're having here on the earth, instead of the problems that people have with each other. And I will, and the interesting thing for me is that the group that is breaking this discussion about this older culture and what about this huge country called Tartaria or Tartaria, and the kinds of architecture we find around the world, and what is clearly a parasitic influence on civil society as opposed to civilization, and just looking at some of the architecture and seeing how, when we look at its composition and its artistry and the imagery that is evoked, whether it's in decorations of buildings along the tops, the way fountains are designed, and how nature is constantly invoked and evoked, and womanhood. And so I have a very, very short selection because I want this just to be an introduction to a direction that Mystic Brew will be taking in the year going forward. And that's, of course, excluding whatever music I do. But this research has been building up, and I still have a lot of recording to do. So this will probably be how I hit the, re-enter into doing something on this channel. It might not all be live stream either. It might be a lot less live stream, but I wanted to start, since I haven't had a live stream in a few weeks, I wanted to start out the new year with one, and without my face showing. Something that I, certainly during certain videos, especially my music videos, my face should be very well featured, whether I'm discussing Weber speakers or doing a song or, just doing some general music discussion. But for these kinds of presentations, I would like to focus more on whatever is on the screen, and even being able to concentrate more on what I'm going to say, even the tone of voice that I use, instead of, any kind, what kind of facial expressions am I conveying with my words. I just think this will be a little bit easier for me. Let me see if anybody's joined us. Oh, hello, Enjoy Being. And hello, Matt Finger. And anybody who is now currently here. So let me get back. Since you're here, Matt Finger, I'm not really following the chat because I'm just gonna do some presentation, and I want to do some stream of thought with this presentation. And so just let me kind of get into my folder before I present it and see where I want to start. I think I'll start off with just kind of like some magical imagery and some thoughts around that. So this is this is a picture, and actually where it is almost isn't as important as that I could put together a dozen pictures from all around the world, and you will see this motif. And it doesn't really matter. It could be shown in Australia, anywhere in Europe, parts of Asia, South America. It really doesn't matter. This represents a culture which I am going to use as the old culture, and its spelling is in the description here, O-L-D-E, the old culture. In the New Earth series, she often will refer to them as the survivors. And of course, even their origin, I feel, is not as important as the culture that it represents. And it was a culture that celebrated civic society. It was a civic culture and not a war culture. Because when we even look at the ornamentation they use, which is excessively beautiful in their statuary, it evokes like almost fairy tale. It keeps it within a mythos, in the mythos of the other world that we actually derive our being from. And recognizing that this world, this earth, and nature is the celebration. And it is celebrated. And so anyway, the interesting thing is that the people on this earth, realizing there's something very wrong with the world, are a group of people who apparently started out with the lies NASA was telling people about the shape of the earth. And this would be the ones who identify as flat earthers. The beauty of this is they seem to be settled on it amongst themselves, and now they're proceeding to investigate what's going on with this earth. Kind of, I guess, from the thing, if they lied about the shape of the earth, what else are they lying about? You know, with they being the controllers, those who give us their story, or whoever their leader is, which would be his story. So, I mean, and then of course our story, the story of you and me, or my story, they hide under the word mystery. Our story is what's being kept and hidden and kept by the few. And this architecture is a little bit of a revelation. What has survived. One of the things being, and one of the things I'm down, and I'm completely fine with the flat earthers, is that I don't have, and other people have said it, John Lamlash has said it, Max Egan is saying it, I don't have the perspective to correctly say I have a gnosis to the shape of the earth. But so I'm just focused on the earth. And of course, as a Gnostic, the earth is alive. The indwelling being of the physical earth, Sophia, or wisdom, more correctly, or VV, which is short for something else. But, you know, there's an intelligence with the earth. And of course, there might be some difference in the cosmology with certain groups, but that's not the focus. The cosmology isn't the focus. The problem on the plane, in the realm, so to speak. The adversary of those of us who just wish proper access to the realm. The earth gave us fish if we wanted fish to eat. The earth does not require a license, but the world does. And so these people are realizing that there is a parasitic kind of alien influence. In my case, it is alien in any real sense of the word, but not E.T. alien. And they're focused on it, and I'm going to join them in that focus. Max Egan has joined them in that focus. And there are multiple trajectories from that. But so I will focus on what some of my strengths are. Some of my strength is the ability to get some, you could say, Gnostic intel, intuitive glimmerings that you know, that I will put out as hypotheses, as suppositions, things to chew on, nothing definitive, but you know, well thought out before presented, not just, you know, kind of things that I've really poured over, or and done some inner journeying on, some, you know, kind of shamano mystic work, I'll call it, and and also my knowledge of alchemy. Alchemy is a language, which for some of the people covering some material that's not their language. And then there's even my familiarity with, you know, the French and Italian and even some of the Latin news, where it's not and I'm not oblivious to what's being written. Going forward, I would look at certain phrases and get the proper, if I thought they were important, you know, like research them enough to translate them, see what's being said, and see if there isn't something being revealed there. Because a lot of this is old archival pictures and photos. There's a lot to pick through. Some of it is just, you know, said through the lens of the times, which can be interesting. But the whole point of the exercise is that the history we know is a narrative meant to misdirect us. Misdirect us about ourselves, to make us think less of ourselves, and to make us think more of people who actually accomplish little except apparently eradicating an older culture and placing themselves as the ones who put it there. And as we'll see with many of the expositions at the turn of the century and the early part of the 20th century, they have these expositions supposedly claiming the great, you know, the beauty of the world, using this older architecture with some modern kitsch crap built around it, and sometimes kitsch built on the older stuff. And then at the end of the exposition, claiming it's all temporary and demolishing it, taking the old world and what it had to say in the form of, if it's a aesthetic expression in architecture, you know, what that statement was, eradicating it. And this is a case in point. I think this is one of the exhibition halls here. So I'm gonna increase. I mean, this is not a great one for blowing up, because it doesn't have the pixels. But over and over again, we're going to see that, first of all, these domes. I've also been with my music thing. I'm also studying electricity and things like capacitors, and amps that one has to be careful of, because even in usage they store energy. But even after you pull the energy out and make them safe to handle, they power up again with themselves without any electricity flowing through them, because they're grabbing atmospheric energy. So here you can kind of see like a major collector, and then some other little wings off the side. In some of the older ones, you can see that they're commissioned, which means all of their energy collection antenna are there. And I won't just state, oh, this is an energy collector. I've been doing some research about how the different forms, what we're talking about, even breaking it down into anodes and cathodes, how brilliant the concept of AC is from that Tesla introduced, at least into the modern world, and how that showed that Tesla was understanding how atmospheric energy really works, and how it's inexhaustible, which is why you wanted a return circuit, which in many ways is what AC really is. Okay, let me see what's going on in the chat just for a second. Hello, Windsor. Dark Truth. Okay, let me go on with my narrative. So anyway, this building is a case in point, but I will kind of break down my future things into probably more focused things, so I can get the best photographs for blowing up and making a point. Okay, let's see what's next in my pictures here. Okay, this is where the calling Walter Bosley comes in my title. By the way, Walter Bosley's been doing live streams at 8:30 Eastern Time every Sunday, and if you enjoy playful and intelligent conversation at the same time, along with clues to putting things together, because Walter's empire of the wheel, I think, ties in with much of this, what I'm calling the old culture, and many people are calling it Tartarians or Hyperboreans. This is like, and if anybody who's following not just his live streams, but any of his work, when he talks about the Sonora Aero Club, and this is supposedly an artistic rendition by this, and I think this is the other one, the Portuguese one. But a case could be made. Again, this doesn't seem to be operating so much on balloons, even though it's posited as that. And once you start understanding the atmospheric energy and arcing energies, you know, and of course, one of the interesting things with Walter Bosley's work is there is an actual explanation of a rotating drum in these anti-gravity machines that were not balloons, both at the end of the 18th and into the 19th century, from the end of the 1800s into the 1900s, these demonstrations, and they spoke about pouring some liquid on a wheel. So there was some need for a mechanical device to make it, and even just simple energy collection to turn a mechanical device that would produce the anti-gravity alone would be sufficient. The interesting thing about this art is there's none of the air. These are actually energy collectors. But and especially this one here with the knobs, which you see a lot in more Asian kind of, like especially in India, and in stupas and things like that. But these don't have their normal energy collecting aerials. Let me go on. Yeah, here's another. This is the one that's called the Portuguese Experiment, and it's just interesting. Again, we have two globes here, little things here. This is energy collection. That's the other thing. I'm also I'm just pausing this. Anyway, this is part of the calling Walter Bosley, but also because people have asked him about Tartaria and this culture, and how I think it applies, has some relevance to his Empire of the Wheel books. And you know, again, because it's supposedly the Tartarian, they're calling it an empire. The word empire has its own interesting connotations when it seems to have come into vogue via John Dee and his connection with the Enochians, or the Ophanim, a group of angels. So this is the Portuguese Experiment, and I could put together all kinds of conjecture over how this could be a very interesting design to create anti-gravity, but that's for those discussions. This is from Coney Island, and just one of their, this is not the main tower, but one of the many towers. The interesting thing is it's lined up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it's interesting. There's 5 by 8, and then each one of these has 8 in them. There's all kinds of symbolism, but I want to get into that. But again, we start seeing the energy collecting motifs, but this looks a little decommissioned, although it does have a ball there. These are what are claimed to be the mercury-filled balls that you'll see all over in these older energy collecting devices. Here would be a cathode. Again, the big bulbous thing is the real. This is kind of like where it gets really massively collected and be caught off. I do wish to, in the future, explain a little bit about the kind of how energy, ultimately, electricity is getting tapped into a flow of electrons that is thick enough to be useful to us, and then creating cathode and anode situations where there's one place that it's attracting electrons and another place that presents itself to this attractor as more attractive than the original attractor, creating a stream. I mean, that's what's done in a power tube, in a guitar amp. You have something called a cathode and an anode, and all the electrons are coming via the cathode and kind of collecting there, boiling off, and then the anode presents a more positive pole to them, and the electrons all rush there. And actually, in a modern tube, in between these two components, they put the signal of the guitar, so as the electrons rush through that other signal of electrons carrying the signal of the guitar, that they pick up that information, jump onto the anode, and then take the amplified signal out to, onto its processing. So the whole thing of electricity is about this flow of electrons. And the electrons are everywhere, which is why in almost all of the star forts and other situations you'll always see water present. And very often, I mean, this is on Coney Island. There's this surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean and all those negative ions. And so now you need different ways of collecting them, and then different towers for their usage. Kind of like, you know, further collection and dispersal. So there's a lot of room for that conversation, just so even with the limited electrical education I'm getting to build amps, and understanding how the components of an electrical circuit are little more than telling electrons that you've accumulated what you would like them to do. And different geometries will create different fields. Just like different geometries in a signal will create different tones in a guitar. So how are we doing in chat? So let me continue. Hope this is making some sense. And again, this is me scratching the surface and of just some of the stuff, like kind of like a teaser. But just remember some of these forms I'm showing here that we'll see all over the old architecture. Cupolas, I'll call this a cupola. You know, various pine or cone shapes. Here's another cone shape, and then these other little juts, and all of these kind of like little nubs increase exposure. They create more contact points for the breeze, because in many cases it's the breeze that's blowing that's carrying the electrons, and in this case with the Atlantic Ocean right behind everything, they're rich negative ions. So by having these little things jut out, also they also create little swirls as the air medium goes past, and these little juts, it creates little eddies, so the electrons will stay around a little bit longer, eddying because of these, and be collected further. Sitting underneath here, it looks to be another like kind of a mercury pot to collect the energy. And then up here are even a bigger form of it. But all of these are catching the ambient electron flows in the air, and then putting them to a central place that can be, you know, collected. And that's why I think you have the, you know, this is like a massive capacitor here, but all these little cupolas act as like little mini capacitors. And if you look into even to a modern amp, you have big honking capacitors, and then you have smaller capacitors kind of for local activity. The big capacitors very often are the ones that are conditioning the energy received. Like in a modern amp, this would be the AC energy you're getting from the wall, and this conditions it for use in the amp. And then you have other capacitors taking the energy and allowing higher or lower passes. In certain cases with capacitors, they let more high frequencies. It's good for shaping the tone, where certain frequencies will pass and other ones will get blocked. And you can configure another way, and you get more low frequencies. And now whether or not this has to do with tonal, it's going to follow the same kind of principle. This is a picture, I believe, where this is called the Court of the Universe, Seligman. So let's look at this old architecture over here. Now this is, I think, an older picture, because first of all, I think they might have been capable of the lighting, but I don't want to get too far ahead of my supposition. Interestingly enough, though, this would probably be later, given all this other, you know, Hollywood lighting. So in here, and the other thing that we must notice is that in here the fountain's operating. In here, it's dead. Okay, this moving water is a big part of the life of things, and of course, this moving water has its own charge. As you notice, there's a ball up here. Let's take a little bit of a look. And one of the things about why, you know, angel motifs, the wings actually in many ways are once again meant to interact with the breeze carrying the electrons, create eddying currents, and to create the maximum amount of exposed area to pick up the electrons. And then here you would have it to be able to collecting and then condensing. Here again, now here would probably here you see some of the big capacitors, and even in a modern amp, you'll see 3 or 4 sometimes, but very often, like it's like 3, but in a smaller amp, just 1. But this is a huge amount of energy capacitance in these 2 domes here. And this one here would be one that could kind of channel it and then make it more appropriate to local usage. Almost no matter where you go in the world, you will find what the parasites are calling the Arc de Triomphe. But in every case, you will very rarely, unless there's like some new additions to it, see anything more like. It's always celebratory, you know, the arrival possibly into a local area of the aria, or the philosophers. Again, the Aryan concept got very corrupted and made very ugly. Michael Tellinger does really great work on explaining who the Arya were, and how even the Sikhs are probably one of the few people before the older Sikhs. There was a militant branch of the Sikhs in response to the Mughals, or the Muslims, that came into India. And of course, did not like the old philosophy, and so there was a real battle that went on there. Okay, let me move along. This is the kind of architecture that we're speaking of all over the world. Where this is Paris, in 1900, and I think this is the Palais des Electricités. Look, and of course, but I mean, look, this is the kind of, I mean, this is like almost like Hindu work, because this is the same Arya, the same philosopher, nobility. I mean, nobility used to mean noble people, not hoarders of either money or genetics, but people who not only share the ways they kept from the older cultures, keeping of the culture and this ornamentation, this celebration of the civic life. I mean, look at this, and it's called the Palace of Electricity. And somebody broke down the word, and you know, electric city, electricity. And of course, you will always see water, because water is part of life. The spraying of water increases negative ions, since we're collecting electrons. Anything that increases negative ions increases ambient energy that can be picked up, and it's just good for the air. All these people are partaking in this negative rich ion and helping them balance it out. And just look at, I mean, I just wish this was a higher resolution thing, because the closer I go in, the worse it gets. So we just and of course, the interesting thing, what do we see? We see lights here. This is supposedly what it looks like at night, or you know. This was some expo. I think this might be along the river, and again, so well, and this is the Eiffel Tower in the background. But look at this architecture. And and again, the constant themes that we see here is like a little arc over here. You get these kind of are more the collectors. Okay. Where was this? This is the Fountain of Energy, Tower of Jewels. I believe this. I don't know if this is the Colombian Expo, but again, they're saying this was all done. I think it was the Colombian Expo, and supposedly it was celebrating the coming of Columbus. Does this look like Columbus? And once again, we don't see war. These are not celebrations of war. These are celebrations of the ancestors, the celebration of sharing of the civil arts themselves, and in certain cases, these people were bringing a genetics that had advanced somewhat, and they were going to share their genetics and share those genetics. They did. They didn't. These are not the ones who hoard their bloodlines. They make sure bloodlines stay clean, but they make sure they get out. Okay, so here we go. We look at this. This is one of the expos. I believe this is the Chicago Expo. And the next picture is one of the domes at Hiroshima. This is like one of the famous pictures of the aftermath of the atomic bomb being dropped on Hiroshima. And look what they dropped an atomic bomb on. The old culture being exterminated is what goes on. This is a beautiful thing. This is from the exposition. This is, I think, the Paris exposition. And I'm just looking at this celebration. And again, we don't see a celebration of war. As a matter of fact, in this photo, what do we see? We see 4 women. This looks to be Mercury. There's the caduceus. There's the wings on his helmet. So this is Mercury, the androgynous one. Here we have a woman who appears to have some kind of crown on her head and a rather large tool in her hand. And I did notice in this breakdown with whoever this, and again, she's kind of holding almost like half dorjes or what you might pine cones, but it looks like equal blessings. And then of course you have, here are the 2 younger ones. This one has the scythe, of course, is for harvesting. It's got some, looks like some wheat over here, and this one here is holding some kind of herb. But on this side, I notice like she's holding looks like a modern mechanical wrench, and then I can't quite make out what's in her other hand. Looks almost like a box with stuff in it. And then she's there with Mercury. Look, and then behind here you can see kind of a wheel or spoke. So this looks a little bit like the modern age. And then we come over here, and what do we see? We see like a lyre, a lute, a stringed instrument, and looks like more sheaves of wheat. She's holding, a palette with her paint sticks over here, a trowel, and of course much of the ancient world they did trowel some plaster and then paint over it. And then we have this woman who is presenting, looks like a maiden or an older woman, but again there's we have different kinds of headdress, but this would appear to be like a little bit more of the older world and this a little bit more of the modern world. And she seems to stand as kind of giving equal blessings to, I guess, modernization in a wholesome fashion. And then underneath here we kind of, again, but, these 2 here do look to, again, where they're younger children up here, but the celebration of the divine feminine to me is screaming at us here. Now there's a guy, Dane Calloway, who's really going after the bogus, who was Africans, who were Native Americans, who were the slaves. Dane Calloway. Think, if you can think of you might have heard of the entertainer Cab Calloway. Well, Dane Calloway, and he's doing he's really busting it open. But this is what, and New Earth had also gotten this out. I'd say probably at least 2 years ago, that the tribes of the Native Americans were every possible concept of what you might call, gene pools. And in here I see 4 exquisite examples. Here, look at the features on this man. Now you will see features like this in East Africa among Ethiopians and some Somalians. But I mean, really, without this man's pigment, the best we might make him is Native American. But you can see these are in what many people would recognize as kind of like a more European bone structure. But his pigment says another thing. The woman, her pigment speaks of a European kind of a pigment. Even her hair, I'm quite sure that's a natural hair color. But then we have other rich features mixed in here. Then we have this gentleman over here. Once again, there you can see that everything that we might modernly call racist. And the other thing is, the beautiful thing is, most of the lecturers here would, again, race is a competition, and we're not in a competition. And in this profile right here, you can see there is no competition, there's only sharing and producing of a noble, dignified people. And then look at this woman. This is, again, another Native American. She could be Balkan. There are a lot of olive-skinned Balkans. This could be Bulgarian, Romanian. And so basically, the Native Americans Right? You could have found anybody, and you could have found tribes largely Caucasian. You would have found tribes that you would have swore, oh, you're from Africa. And they're like, no, no, we've been here for about 10, 20,000 years. And this picture is emerging, and this is another beautiful part of, and most of these people are flat earthers, and so they have their own truth, and their truth isn't about ETs, it's about us. And I love that focus, and I'll just be an earther with them. I will just realize we live on the same earth, and we're perceiving the same problems. Let's focus and bring our gifts together. This is from kind of thing that was all about Sweden, but I haven't broken this down. I might break it down, but it's some kind of like what looks like to be a cannonball. But the thing is the presentation. In case anybody thinks oh, that's just an ornate ball, right? I guess where you're going with that, it's how they chose to present this with this picture of this huge crater here that would easily, I mean, again, why would you show this ball and this picture of, shall we say, the success of the, I mean, look, this thing is like, seems to be calling some kind of ordinance. And of course, look, it's on this very fancy mat. I mean, it's like, ooh, the pretty shiny thing. What does a pretty shiny thing do? Well, apparently this is what that pretty shiny thing does. And I don't have a date because it's from a huge book, and they don't put dates with everything. But this is from some kind of history of Sweden. This is another one of, I'm not sure if this is that. Yeah, this is the Palace of Electricity in an artistic rendition. And I noticed again in so many of the artistic renditions, they take off the towers. They decommission them, so to speak. Now this is a statue, I forget where, in one of the old architecture, and then they had a name of who this is, and this is actually kind of a stylized like dragon or griffin, but they kind of, you know, it's a stuff. This is Penthesile, the queen of the Amazons, and apparently this this is not, sometimes they make her look like Athena, but in this case, without the other accoutrement. This is the queen of the Amazons that is often found in this old architecture. Not sure what this place is, but it's another one of the many kind of Arc de Triomphes, and again, almost like this Columbia figure up here. Again, it doesn't matter where it is. You're going to see the same architecture in this period, and it's not that old. And this represents the culture that was, until a few hundred years ago, the civilized, you could say the civilizers, the bringer of civil society into the world. And then come this group of parasites and their wars. And I would say, you know, it's around the time of all the wars, probably, you know, claimed in 1812, but it could be also wide. We're finding that they seem to have added 1,000 years of, you know, to a timeline where everything kind of happened concurrently, which would represent the parasitic takeover of this old culture. And they're trying to make it seem like it's thousands of years, and it's only happened within the last 1,000 years, and seems in earnest in the last couple of hundred years, 300-400 at the most. This is kind of a representation of these star forts that are always built around water, and they seem to be made. But this is a poor rendition. There's much better ones out there. Again, just another example. I'm getting ready to wind down. This was the visit of Queen Victoria to Paris. What I find interesting is all of this lighting off of this dome. I mean, this place is well lit. What's this? World? Oh, this is the map of the world in 1688. I don't know why I saved this. So anyway, this is an interesting photo. This is Sweden, antique and modern. I guess during the reign of one of their kings, Thomas II. And it's interesting because this is really kind of broken up into two pieces. In the background, it looks, you know, kind of like a world in turmoil, not in utter chaos. And then we have these four ladies up here. Again, the divine feminine is all over this ancient, with this old culture. Now this Could be the queen of the Amazons, but it could also be Athena. But anyway, but there's that kind of, you know, don't mess with us kind of woman. Here we have a woman which looks like, you know, some kind of recognized matriarch. I'm not going to call her queen because a queen is a parasitic concept in this case, unless the queen actually, you know, had much of her bloodline in the people themselves, in which case that makes her legitimate queen, like the queen bee of a hive. I mean, those are her daughters. Okay, so anyway, we have like an Athena-like or Amazon woman. Some, you know, she's got the scepter, so this would be the grand matriarch. Then we have, I'll go over here for a second. You know, this woman who's holding this crown. These two are actually holding their own crown behind a backdrop of what some might say is a sun, but it also looks like a portal. I'll end up with the portal concept, calling Walter Bosley, and I'll make that evident in a moment why I'm calling Walter Bosley on that one. Okay, so we have this woman here, and she's sharing with, and now this woman here is two things. To the best of the artist's ability to render it, it looks like this would be a red hair or a ginger woman, I would say. The way they kind of rendered it from the other hair. They made an attempt to make it a little bit darker. Also, she's holding a club. Also, she's much larger. And there's a couple of ways of comparing. First of all, look at all three of these ladies. I mean, she's like representing a warrior. She's an older woman. She's a younger woman. So let's take the size of the arms of the two older women and compare them to the wrist size of this woman, including the length. Another metric, look at from foot to knee here and from foot to knee here. This woman is like another foot taller than these other women. This is a big woman. She's got a club. Looks like she might have ruddy hair. Her hair is plaited in kind of almost like a princess fashion. This is a very interesting quartet of women. And so, calling Walter Bosley. This, to me, of course, certainly can represent the sun. But ultimately, what I see is a portal. Okay, almost like, you know, a gate. But a portal is is like a chakra is a portal. And then this configuration of these three crowns in a portal is we're getting into, you know, we're invoking the three in a portal, or Triskelion, or the kind of the insignia of Hecate, or Hecate as some people say. I say Hecate. And so for me, and then this, of course, is the form of the wheel. So we have these powerful women, the evocation or invocation of the three of the Triskelion within a portal or a wheel. So anyway, this I would think would be the antique. And then we have below, again, so here's the women into the portal, the three, I think, to me, evidence of both Hecate and Empire of the Wheel here, calling Walter Bosley. And again, it's a supposition. And if he shoots it down and say that Radagast's talking shit, then I'll, you know, he's doing the research. I'll accept that. But it's like, take a look. I think, and again, not that one is the other, but that they're related is what I'm theorizing here. So it's interesting. So beneath these ladies, looking, you know, to be in pretty good shape, we come down here, and this man looks a little bit wretched. Doesn't seem to be wounded or bleeded. This guy over here also, it looks like he might have slave chains on, but it just could be some kind of wristband. But he's not looking good. He looks like he ate some bad food. Again, he doesn't appear to be bleeding or under any external duress. In each of these cases, they're seeing whatever woe is befallen them seems to be the state of things and not from some kind of wounding. And then, of course, we look at the ordnance. We see part of a sword here. We see part of a banner with the banner there, and I'm going to have interesting suppositions about flags and banners with this kind of top on them with regards to static electricity. And then we have cannon, partially covered here, cannonballs, another sword, and then back here we have some more spears and, you know, some kind of thing. And then another interesting motif that Martin Ledke of Flat Earth British pointed out is this empty Roman suit. In many cases, you'll even see them carrying it around like a banner. So there's some kind of, but it's not part of a, again, there's almost like there's a battle between the old world and the new world. And to me, this is part of the old world, and this is part of the parasitic warlike culture. And for some reason, the artist in this rendition showed the old world looking good and wholesome, and the parasitic warlike culture being in not happy about things. Here's another case of that. Oh, okay, so it looks like we've done, I didn't put much aside because I wanted to limit myself. Okay, so I'm now in the live chat to say hello to Oswald and Dark Truth and Windsor and Paul from Newcastle and Persian Scribe, R.C. Veronese, Christian Martin, Lady Zaga. Yeah, the empty suit. So anyway, okay, there we go. I didn't realize I had closed out my source of my pictures. So I'm coming to the end here. That was what so basically that's what I planned. I want to have discussions about the old culture, what many people are going to be calling Tartaria and Tartaria. I want to be on board so people can kind of find the discussion that I'll be having about this. But I think as we start to pull apart, at least Tartaria, the Tartars and stuff like that, for me the actual focus is, and that's why if you've seen anything on not Michael Tellinger, Tessarian, and he speaks on the Arya, Arya, and that this was really kind of a Gnostic philosopher. I mean, the Gnostics were lovers of wisdom. Again, the Aeonic name of the indwelling spirit of Gaia is wisdom, Sophia. So philosophy, to love wisdom is to love Sophia. It's kind of a giveaway of who we're talking about when we get into philosophy at its roots before it became sophist and legal and distracting and a profession. And so these philosophers were keepers of noble ideas, and the noble idea was to share, to emulate nature, who shares everything that she has, shares her fruits, her everything, just abundance. And those who were lovers of wisdom and wanted to do noble things on the earth, that these were the Arya, and these traces that we see, and the ability that they were able to take, understood the alchemy and be able to make use of atmospheric energy. I mean, for me, Tesla was only bringing back, trying to resuscitate what it was, and I think also, I'm not sure that they may have been using DC in those times, and the understanding of alternate current energy, the return, the infinite looping of electrons from one place to another, and getting into that current is what AC was about. And so I think he was offering an improvement that made it that he could stream it further now, and it didn't have to be so locally generated and have, as you can see in these complexes, they're constant duplicating of towers and capacitors. And I think through discovering AC, or alternating current, he had really tapped in to the absolute ubiquity of electron flows, how to create that flow, tap into it, and just keep it running. Yeah, I've seen everything that New Earth has done. I love her work. I love the work of people who make me think and do my own research. And sometimes they provide great pearls as they are, and I don't, but invariably they create the interest. And sometimes, people like some of the flat earthers, again, their alchemy is not their strong suit, but boy, they're dogged researchers, and they just are bringing mountains of archival evidence to go through. I mean, every single screenshot that I have here, I'm pretty sure I took off of one of these, one of these people. Again, these almost to a streamer. These are that of the people I'm currently who are having this conversation, this discussion, are flat Earth people, and that's because they came to the conclusion that they lied about the plane that we live on. What else are they lying about? And then when they took a look, they realized they're lying about everything. So they're on that. And so they've kind of, it's like, how many times can you affirm to each other, yeah, the earth is flat, before you go, so what are we going to do about the problems on our plane? And this is what they're doing. And this is the beauty of, to me, the focus of the flat earthers is they realize that we have a problem on our planet, plane, or realm, on Earth. And that's where let's say Earth. We're Earthers. And then so they're focused. They're looking at it, and again, they're bringing what they have from their own cosmology. But I mean, they're identifying a lot of things, and sometimes they're keeping it what I consider a little on this simple side. But I see growth. But it's again, the research, the absolute dogged digging up the bones. I mean, just that energy alone and what they're presenting, and they've created a buzz. I mean, now on a sober stream like Walter Bosley's channel, people are going, "Have you heard about Tartaria?" And he's like, "Oh no." And again, it's been around at least for 3 years because of the work of New Earth. I've been following it for a long time. So now to see it getting hot, I've spoken about it. You can go back years ago and I bring it up, but it wasn't a topic. Now it's a meme. Right now, to be woke, you need to know the names Tartaria. So I consider that to be a good woke stream to pursue. So that's what I'll be doing. So that's it. That's kind of like, and of course I will be doing some music, but music is one of the harder things to get done because there's a whole art in that. So, so this is my return from a long quiet. I'm really happy not to be putting my face out there. I will do from time to time, but I'm kind of enjoying just not having to worry about what's going on with the camera. So it looks pretty quiet in chat, and either that or my chat feed stopped going. So yeah, so all please be well, and let's. This year, I do believe that 2019 will be a year in a decade past. We will say, "Wow, now that was quite a year, wasn't it?" Russian collusion is one, it's for me, at least the way it's being bandied about is another. It's just another nonsense. And of course, this whole Russia is the bad guy is part of a historical narrative of who has the seeds of the old culture. It's almost as if like Russia isn't living the old culture currently, but they have the seed bank. And for the parasites, that seed bank must go. It's interesting, Matt Finger. One of the reasons I had to say I will show my face is because, again, I have had people tell me they like to look at me, so I can't hide all the time. But on a night where I decided to do this about an hour ago, and I wasn't going to worry about the fact that I probably don't. I'm not looking particularly presentable, and I just wanted to be. I wanted to say what I had to say, and I wouldn't have done the show if I couldn't kind of just stay hidden for a change. Of course, you just could be being a smart ass, Matt Finger. And of course, And of course, you know, with our friend any among us, I would look forward to having some. I mean, I would love to have some electrical conversations with us banding around like this kind of topic, and maybe, you know, do them in a Zoom, record them if we all agree. Hey, that's worth people listening to. Ah. Well, I might be reconfiguring my backdrop as well. Again, I do have more room now. I miraculously got through this month. Again, I didn't mention that it's been scary, but I have now filed for Social Security. When and if that kicks in, it would I'll certainly be breathing easier. But I really can reconfigure my house a little bit because I have room to do it. But thank you for all of you who are just telling me I have a pleasant face. Oh, he is? That's good to know. Yeah, again, I think, you know, just identifying this place on the earth that is clearly on older maps called Tartaria, and now some CIA document came out saying that they were going to keep that quiet. There's a rich story there, which I think will be worthy of allowing this story to stay relevant longer, because we're just scratching the surface of it. Again, the culture that certainly has a presence throughout Tartaria, and that may have been its homeland at one point. I'm, you know, gonna, you know, it's like the Survivor, the Hyperboreans. I don't, you know, Atlantic, you know, the Atlantis and Hyperborea, although both found on older maps. You know, it's just like, are we talking about one or this? And that's why I like a generic term like the old culture. And then using the evidence of their architecture as a marker of what this culture looked like, using its art to tell us the quality, the nature, and the beauty of who these people were, and allow us to tap into that so that our own DNA can reattune to that this is our past, not the ones that we get in the history books. None of us is a bunch of ignorant cave people. Whether or not at one time we were not, whoever these nobles were, had done a lot to eradicating any backwardness. They went across this whole plane, this whole earth, and brought their richness and their ability to build a more, I guess, a larger, coherent iteration of what was originally tribal, and enable it to be grander than that, but still with all keeping the civic and tribal and elders as a central part, and enabling through the coordination and the pooling of the most talented to what they could be talented at, and building these, you know, true civil societies. I want to use the word civil societies as opposed to civilization, because the word civilization now seems to mean what we currently have. I think in the true meaning of civilization, that's what I would call these civil societies. But civilization has actually come to mean the warlike, the ones with this whole part of humanity dedicated to holding weapons. And that is not our culture. That is not the culture we come from. That is the culture that dominated this older culture, and they took history and made it look like this is how it's been for a lot longer than it's been. It has not been for thousands of years. This is a relatively recent cancer on the genetics and on the ability to live on this earth properly. And that's it. You know, there were certain you know, words that kind of weight something and don't let it fly. like there is, you know, there's a global, there's a book of the controllers, and it was given a name that has weighed it down, rather than just looking at it as a criminal playbook for the world by the world criminals, and the most criminal of these people are names we do not know. This book, this playbook, is hidden behind a very controversial title. This controversial title is The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Okay? That's its title. To me, I could get rid of the elders. I would just call it the protocols. Forget any ethnicity. I don't consider criminality an ethnicity. And if one takes a look across the fuckery that goes on, that is following this playbook, you'll find all kinds. And I don't really care. I don't want to cloud criminality with any form of ethnicity or anything, because it doesn't hold across. You can't find a criminal of one ethnicity and have it back engineered onto the ethnicity. It clouds things. It naturally creates defensive. It naturally and healthily creates defensive mechanisms. This book, this protocols book, is the playbook of the world's criminality. And how do we know who they are? They're the ones pulling it off. There are people indulged in criminal behavior, and none of us should give a shit what ethnic or religious group. We don't care. I don't care at all about religion these are human animals caught being criminals. Let's just keep it criminal. This is what we're dealing with. Criminals. And every single ethnicity is represented in the criminal class. We need every single human animal that is awake to what it is, who we are on this planet. And again, there are the humans, and those of us, you know, we do a knockabout kind of way, but we're not criminals. And then there's the parasitical criminals, and that is their playbook. But to cloud it with to me, any ethnic identity is to completely poison the utility of knowing their rule book. This is the world criminal playbook. Because again, I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood surrounded by Jews, and the goodness in my life, heroes in my life, are Jewish people doing good things for another human being. And I want all human beings who know the reason they do what's good is from their heart tells them to do so. And if we're not careful, we could just lose people just naturally defending what they consider an identification that some humans make. Humans make identifications. And to me, if we keep it real clean, criminal, non-criminal, let's just keep it clean. Then we can decriminalize this world together. And all non-criminals can live together in peace. And the petty small criminals, well, they'll have to deal with the neighborhood, because they won't have a bunch of laws that makes it illegal for a neighborhood to lump its asshole that's been doing up to nothing good without getting arrested by another force that controls the way of the people. But first we have to deal with the bigger structure. And then once we come to a common agreement that we have a real problem, then we'll find out who defends the problem. And to me, that's a discussion for humans to have with each other. We're certain of the humans who might find themselves providing a service to the parasites might want to take a look at their hearts about what they're doing. Okay, so I haven't seen anything. I guess maybe I haven't seen anything come up. Persian scribe, thank you. Yeah, well, that, Persian, what I'm seeing is this huge flood of information. Talking about flood, the mud floods. Some people make a big focus of it. There's no question in my mind now that there was a flood. The Box Saga, I enjoy it, but there's something, I think the Box Saga seems to be a very unique, I wouldn't call it a pan-human tribe, but something went on there. It's fascinating to hear Jim tell his story. But they're talking about, this Hyperborea and a time where it really appears that the Arctic area was much, much more amenable. There's pictures, Sylvia showed them on New Earth, of Moscow with palm trees in them. All right? When we still had photography, Moscow still had palm trees. What we've experienced, whatever this supposedly the year without a summer, something happened, something major happened. And again, you saw that picture of that crater from that wall there earlier. Again, that there shit went down, and really bad, ugly things went down. Hello, Beebs. Something ugly went down real recently, and I think part of the marker is the Spanish Reformation of when history changed. But again, I don't want to rest anywhere. I don't want to have to really put markers. Little by little, I'll start putting some hypothetical markers down. Ones that may help us by putting that marker down, experiment with placing things on different timelines. And the whole purpose of that is how does your DNA, what does your gut tell you about how the world looks to the part of you that actually has some memory of how we lived on this earth only a couple hundred years ago. Our ancestors are still alive. Those who didn't get caught up going to heaven or hell, who actually was able to stay with the earth and be ancestors. I was very fortunate. Neither of my parents got caught up in that, so they're still available to me. That's a big part of a certain cosmology, where you don't get to be ancestors, and that's why the whole worship of the ancestors, as they put it, was considered evil. And it wasn't worship per se, it was constant interaction, it was reverence for those who had produced us, and that because they were still part of it and still part of the process and still had spirit skin in the game, how we conducted ourselves mattered to them. And especially since there's a good chance to reincarnation, they'd be joining us again in some other form. And will we have honored them by at least giving them, at least keeping up what was handed to us, if not having improved upon it? And I've pointed out before, if you go to the houses of the quote the Elites, because El is their god, so they're Elites. They like to call themselves elites, except when they do some of their nasty sacrifice work. El does eat indeed. El eats. But anyway, so that group, if you go to their houses, they have portraits of all their ancestors. See, they know that. But for them, it's about this connection to the divine right to rule bloodline game that they invented, so they play it. They invented the game. They made it. That their bloodlines are important, or as important as the made-up money. They created their importance out of thin air, like they created their money out of thin air. It's pure bullshit and magic. And but they worship their ancestors. So there's some myth busting to do, busting open the ones that serve us, and busting the bullshit ones that have been planted only in the past couple hundred years to occupy our mythic inner space. And so again, just kind of getting back, there's certain cosmologies where when somebody dies, there's a judgment, and they're going to go to, they're going to get locked away. They're either going to get locked away in heaven or locked away in hell. Where the old ways, the ways of the earth, We were part of a continuum. We were here, we had been here, we will be here again, and and some people tended to stay with certain kind of, you could say, almost, spirit or soul streams of certain groups, and then other might move out and come back after they've had whatever. But there was this knowing, this gnosis of the continuum of the spirits, the human spirit. Okay, Christian, take care, and thank you again for that artwork. Maybe I should turn it into a t-shirt and make merch out of it. So yeah, anyway, so these are some of the concepts I really want to do some research and like pick one thing at a time, instead of just jumping all over certain cases about culture and other cases more maybe about the actual tech as I can understand it, and then explain it where not only am I offering a hypothesis like that this is what this is, but explaining why I think it is and how it would work as a concept. So that'll be it for this this New Year Mystic Brew, and I hope Walter Bosley is amused. I have never really tweeted out much. I almost tweeted him this so he would know it was on, but I'd rather he hears about it. And again, Walter Bosley, author of many great books. The ones I want to really get down to are The Secret Missions of Richard Burton and The Empire of the Wheel. There's a connection that I have with Hecate, and he has one, and I would love to be able to explore a connection with him in a non-public setting, I shall say. But anyway, I'm hoping that this actually gives, because there's a lot of places he could go. He go, oh, let me put Tartaria in, and he might get one of the flat Earth people, and there is, once again, it's not the flat Earth. These people are not alchemists by any stretch of the meaning, nor are they multilingual. I'm talking about, the kind of patchy multilingual, where you can recognize keywords, where you're not just looking at a bunch of script, where there's something to pull out of it. And again, they've dug it up. So okay, they've dug it up. So to me, it's just like, what, my brothers and sisters, let me just bring my perspective. I'm quite sure that's what you're really saying, and so we can just bring our different perspectives together and put it out in the public space, so everybody kind of knows what we're thinking. Okay, so Beebs is saying, do you have any memories of original timeline organic Earth? Yeah, a lot. I mean, not only do I have memories, I'm starting to realign with it, to the point, just to making sure, it's kind of like entering the dreaming in many ways. Thank you, Person Scribe. But it's, there's so much to unpack, and there's plenty more to deliver. So, and I'm not, it's something I'm enjoying taking my time about. And also, there almost seems to be like a timing of me not sitting on too much before it actually even would be coherent. But I can feel, there's a lot I can feel, but isn't necessarily able to turn into language, and even that, until I can turn it into language, it's still at a feeling level and not quite at a the lucid level yet. It's still dreaming. It's still kind of like in a dream space, instead of lucid dreaming. So anyway, so that'll be it for tonight. And thank you for those who have joined, who've been here, and for those of you who will see this after the live stream, Happy New Year, and let's see what we can do about being, create an anticipation for really great things to happen on this earth, and standing in our sovereignty. Basically, like, this is our earth. We need to take it back, and and it needs to be taken back. It won't be given back, but taking it back as much as probably 95% attitude and 5% action, because attitude just will change behaviors, and it's like if suddenly everything you taught your dog decided, I'm not listening anymore. That would probably really throw you. And we are the L-lights dogs, and if we stop acting like such good dogs, we don't necessarily have to bite, but it's just like, I don't know, shitting on the furniture might be the first good move. Anyway, that's it. Let me that last, obviously I should just call it a good night before I make any more dog analogies. So take care of yourselves, and we'll just keep, this channel will be continue to have content. So, Happy New Year.